Great. So we'll hop right in. First question on our docket. Who are you? And how many hats do you wear? And what kind of hats are they in the org? We'll start with Aaron.
All right, jumping right in. Hi, everybody. My name's Erin. Who am I? I have a background in exercise science and sports biomechanics. I also have an autistic special interest in neurobiology, psychology, sociology, change management, leadership development. I just like people and how they tick. And the hats I wear, I'm a partner, I'm a parent. Um, I think I'm a problem solver more than anything, and I'm also a project manager and a mentor and a coach. If you were to sum me up in one sentence, I typically tell people that I am not as serious as I seem, nor as funny as I think.
Do you want us to jump in?
Oh, yeah, please.
So I'm Rebecca Winter. For Mass 5051, I'm executive director and a board member, and I am the not official lead for content team. So if anyone here wants to be the lead of content team, let me know. And man, Aaron had a much more fleshed out answer. I thought I was just going to focus on MAFO, but let's see, who am I outside of MAFO? I'm a director of IT for a Montessori school that's very social justice oriented. So I come from more of a social justice background rather than an activist background. And I have special interests with the LGBTQ TIA plus community. I am myself am queer. I'm also disabled, so I also do advocacy work with the disability community, and I do work with women's sexual health and wellness as well. So those are hats that I wear outside of here. I'm also a mother. I am a licensed massage therapist. I'm a whole bunch of random things. And I'm kind of that for MAFO too. I just take on work as it's available. I'll pass it to you, Jeremy.
Sure. Nice. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeremy. I am professionally a marketing content person for a long time. That's not really what I do for us. I am interested in messaging and words, and I, way back at the beginning, did some light newsletter editing, but that newsletter team is rocking 100%, so I don't do that anymore. Um, the piece of my professional life that bleeds into MAFO the most is my involvement in programming events. So working for industry conferences, who should speak, how should we run a program? I've become one of our program leads here for who's going to talk, how long should they talk, what should the messaging be? Um, and that's probably the one I do the most. I think I've done a little bit of everything too. I have been a plug the speakers in before the rally guy. I have been a chant leader. I have been on stage, backstage, a lot of things. But I think the overlap, like I said, is mostly on the program side. I'm also a parent and a partner. I am a musician. I'm in an a cappella band, and I think that's most of the summary. Also, and I'm currently unemployed. So if anybody has a good marketing content job, they want to set me up, I'll just throw that out there. That would be helpful too. Oh, I also, sorry, other hats. I represent, along with Kennedy, I represent Mass 5051 to the Fight Back table. I'm on the steering committee there. I also do Dedham Court Watch with Luce, so I've got a couple of other pieces there where I'm trying to support everything that the movement is doing.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I think it's no surprise to anyone that all three of you are folks with many hats in many different places. That is fantastic. Our next question is, how old were you when you first became an activist? And then a follow-up, if you feel comfortable, tell us about your first act. And we'll start with, Jeremy unmuted. We'll start with Jeremy.
I got a fun one. My first bit of activism was when I was in middle school and in the choir, and the town needed a Prop 2.5 override to fund, I don't even remember what, something about the arts in Needham. And I remember going to a candlelight vigil on the field and helping to um, talk to people outside of the grocery store. And it worked. We got the override and things happened. And I would love to say that that was the start of a long, continuous career of activism, but it wasn't. After that, I didn't do much until much more recently, volunteering, making calls, and knocking on doors for ranked choice voting in Maine a few years back, and for Bernie Sanders' campaign. And then the last year and a half, all of this. So it's been a pretty dramatic uptick, I would say, for me, but it did have its roots way back there in the 80s.
All right. Yeah, I see Aaron pointing at me. Um, so I didn't consider myself an activist until this all started, but when I went back and thought about it, I have been doing work like that for a long time. My mom marched with Martin Luther King Jr., and she kind of raised me with the idea that I need to take part of my community, I need to be responsible for my community, and I need to stand up for the things that I believe in. The first time I remember actually doing that, I was in high school, and there was a small, oddly enough, Christian white nationalist cult that decided that our school was satanic, and they brought a lawsuit against the school. And there was a whole public hearing that was held at my high school, and I got up and spoke from a student perspective and how absolutely ludicrous that idea was. And then the first time I ever actually protested outside was during George W. Bush's just Jr. Yeah, George W. Bush Jr.'s first term. And I happened to be living in Texas at the time. And let me tell you, getting out on the streets in Dallas, in a very, very, very red area of Dallas, is much different than the protests that we do up here. So, yeah, we have a lot of privilege, and I keep that in mind often.
So both great stories. I like to say I was born an activist, but I didn't actually do activism TM until probably closer to 2016. Um, I grew up in a situation where self-advocacy was itself a form of activism. My parents and my family were very loving, but somewhat misguided in their approach to raising me, and just not a match with what I needed. Um, so, after college, I was able to start shifting from my own self-advocacy into broader advocacy. A lot of learning and unlearning, but they say that pride's a protest. And so with that in mind, my first protest would have been Pride in Rochester, New York, of all places. Very small, but it was great. It was exactly what I needed at the time. It felt powerful to be there. And then, as the years went on, I learned more about the world and more of what was happening. And I really dove in, jumped in with both feet at the Women's March in Washington, D.C. My now wife and I and a friend drove down from Boston and stayed with a friend who lives outside DC and attended that. And I just felt like I had to stay involved ever since. So on some level, I've been doing something either officially or unofficially, just using whatever influencer channels I have to amplify messages. But it's been great to do something in an organization more officially. I hate that the need is there, but I'm really glad that the opportunity is there.
Those are all very inspiring answers. I think it's no surprise that you all three have been involved in some way, if not in a large way, for a very 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 long time, and I think that really shows. Our next question is, and it sounds very relevant to a lot of your answers last, but what inspires you personally to do this work? We'll start with Rebecca.
feel like it's easier to ask me what doesn't inspire me to do this work. I couldn't not do it. I really could. I physically could not do this work. I have two small children. They need to exist in this world. I would like them to not exist under an authoritarian regime that's oppressing all creativity and freedom out of our country. Uh, Sorry, that one gets me. So yeah, I think about them a lot in this work. And then I think about the people who are going to be hurt the most. And some of those people are in my communities. I are in the queer communities, are disabled. And then I think about the people who have even less voice and privilege, my immigrant neighbors, the Black and brown communities that have been shit on by our country since its inception. And I can look in the mirror and I can see that based on the color of my skin, I'm going to have more privilege when I get out on the street, and I need to use that privilege. So I do it because I understand the writing on the wall. I know what authoritarianism is. I know how bad it can get, and we cannot have that here. Yeah, I can't stop.
I'll jump in on top of that because I'm very similar, Rebecca. I can't not do it. I just feel compelled. I do care very deeply about creating a better world for all of us. I just feel like things don't have to be as hard as they are, and there's just something to that really keeps me going. I'm also just wired for equity and fairness. And to Rebecca's point, same thing. I am capable in many ways, and I'm privileged in many ways. So, I want to leverage those blessings into action that can help others who don't have the same opportunities. I remember being on a Reddit thread kind of early on in things when people were sort of debating whether to go to protests or not, and it happened to be a mom's thread, and somebody was like, like, not sure if it'll be violence, and my kid deserves to have me around. And I was like, these people who are being kidnapped off our streets, their kids deserve to have them around. And it was such a moment for me where like it solidified that I can't not do it, because of the people. They don't have a choice, right? And there's so many who don't have a choice, and I do, and so I feel like I have to make that choice.
That's hard to follow. But that was a really compelling point. Quick story on privilege. I mentioned I've been doing Denim Court Watch with Luce, and a couple weeks back, I was going to my shift and I was meeting somebody that I hadn't met in person before, and they had chimed in on a Signal thread where they were, and so I walked up to who I thought was assuming was the person. Turned out I was right, and I walked up to her and said, "Hi," I forget what her name was, Maureen, I think, and she looked scared for a minute, and then she said, "Oh, Jeremy." I walked up to her wearing my ball cap and a flannel shirt and a white, middle-aged white guy with a beard, and knew her name, and she assumed that I was an ICE agent or somebody who had been surveilling her. I'm not a particularly intimidating guy. I'm not very tall. I'm kind of out of shape, whatever. But I have enough of the elements of that class, of the white, male, straight, privileged land, that to what both Aaron and Rebecca mentioned, I feel like I have to use this for good. I am doing what I can to help. I am older than a lot of people in 5051, and I remember back to spending a lot of my childhood growing up watching victories, watching gay marriage become a thing, watching even George W. Bush getting AIDS programs in Africa running, which have now been dismantled, thanks Elon. So many things that seem like, yeah, this country has some problems, but we're heading the right direction in a lot of ways. And the train wreck that it has become, and the sort of insult to all the progress that a lot of people had been making for decades and decades, burns me up. So I want to at least reclaim that and then help get that train back on schedule and start improving all the things that weren't right even before this latest iteration. So yeah, so I had to help. So I'm helping, doing what I can.
Very, very powerful answers from the lot of you. I really appreciate you being vulnerable in those spaces, and sharing with us. what motivates you? I know we can all resonate with a lot of, if not all of those reasons. It's a crazy time. It's a crazy time. And it's very inspiring. I can't lie. I got a little fired up hearing you all speak about that. Because you're right. Got to get out there. Got to do it. Um, Now that we've heard a little bit about who you all are as people and why you chose to get involved, we'll now ask you some questions about how you're involved, particularly as board members. Um, First off, what are your responsibilities as a board member for the org? And we'll start with Aaron.
All right, keep me honest here. Legal, fiscal, safety. Making sure that our major initiatives that we're undertaking are mission aligned, and that's kind of the bulk of it. Anyone want to land that plane a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it. So we are legally, financially, and publicly bound to the organization, and we need to make sure that we don't go broke, that we stick to our guiding star, to our mission, and that we protect our people, just like Aaron said.
I think people see you in particular, Rebecca, but maybe all three of us, most of the time that you see us doing things in the org, we're not acting as board members. The board member
Yeah.
responsibilities are not actually, they're important, they're critical, but they're not high volume. It's not like we're
Mhm.
facing weighty board decisions every day or every week. So, most of what we do winds up being Jeremy, the programs guy, and Rebecca, the ED. So the basic board stuff that Aaron outlined is what it is, and it's really important, but it's not a ton of work.
Yeah, it's more about risk than work, because we're the ones that if people go and dig through paperwork to figure out whose house they need to go and knock on a door, they're gonna find us. So I sometimes say when I do new volunteer training that, like, we were just the schmucks who signed up on the paperwork. We were just like the people dumb enough or brave enough, right? It depends how you look at
It's bravery. It's definitely bravery.
it.
Well, that's awesome. I think I definitely know, at least from my perspective, when I think of a board, at least in like a professional setting, I've worked with a lot of board members, but I've always wondered what's going on in that room, you know? But being just responsible top to bottom makes a lot of sense. Mhm. Regarding leadership, so it sounds like you all have a lot of experience leading things even before you got to this organization. So this question can be for either 50-51 or any other time you've been in a leadership position. Mm. What's one leadership lesson you wished you had learned earlier? We'll start with Jeremy for this one.
I hope this isn't too negative, but it shouldn't be. That's the lesson. It shouldn't be negative. The thing that I wish I learned earlier was saying no earlier. When you are approached with something, a leadership decision that you have to make that is clearly not going to work for one reason or another, especially in a volunteer organization like this, often the instinct is to sort of try to help somebody go along, not shoot people down. You want to be supportive. Sometimes that winds up wasting time or making somebody's feelings hurt worse later or causing problems. I think there's a certain level of being willing to say no and helping to model the acceptance of no when people tell you no is the other half of that, is being willing to hear sometimes not all ideas are good ideas, and it's worth talking about all ideas. It's worth exploring them, but sometimes you just have to move on. And I feel like as a boss professionally, sometimes I do a little too much, like, okay, let's try it. When in my head I'm going, yeah, we tried that last year, it's not going to work, or whatever. That I'm a softie, I guess, is what I'm saying. So I think a little bit of tough love sometimes is probably something that I could do a little bit better. And it is a weird fit in a purely volunteer organization. So just my thoughts on that. Who's next?
I'm going to be like the constant middle person. Um, I have had kind of an odd pathway in life because I got put in my first management position when I was 17. And just for better or worse, I've ended up in lots of different management positions, often without actually seeking that. I just want to be where I can be effective. And for whatever reason, I tend to end up being given leadership opportunities, which has been really wonderful. But also, as a young manager, I had to learn some hard lessons. So I went from several different service and retail and customer service management positions. And then I landed in management with Apple, which was one of my favorite jobs. I had just come from working at like a high-end women's retail clothing store, which is odd because I'm not really a fashionable girly. And I thought I knew everything. I approached leadership with like a lot of overconfidence. And so it was really good and humbling for me when during training, every time they said, okay, and this is how we use the POS system, and this is how we do this. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I got this. Someone pulled me aside and they said, hey, I know you've managed retail stores before, but we might do it a little differently here. So maybe like listen to what we do. And I was like, oh, I'm the asshole right now. I am projecting confidence, but it's also like coming out as very egotistical and shitty. So I learned really early on that to be an effective leader, you've got to be really humble. You've got to be able to listen. You've got to understand the things you don't know, and like don't be afraid to ask questions. And I try to bring that spirit to the work that I do here at Mass 5051, because I really don't know a lot about activism, especially mass mobilization. I've picked up a lot of skills over the last year and a half, but there are other people in this space and in spaces with our coalition partners that have been doing work like this for a really long time. And it's my job to learn from them so that we can grow better. And it's also my job, like I pick up a lot of random work here because stuff has to get done, but it's my job to know what am I competent at? What can I learn with some help? And what do I really have to say? This is out of my scope. I need to find other people who can help with this work, because none of us are perfect and we can't do this all by ourselves. All right, Erin.
Well, my answer dovetails well with that. I was considering this question. I was like, how do I possibly think of one thing? And then I realized that that's my answer. It's okay to not have all the answers. And that's for me in particular, intellect or knowledge is my currency. I love to know things, not because of any reason really other than being helpful. I feel like if I know something, then I can use it later. And being helpful is something that I really like to be, but it is not always helpful to quote unquote have all the answers. To Rebecca's point, it can cause you to stop listening and stop learning. When that's exactly the opposite of what I want to do. So being comfortable with not having the answers and asking up the questions and showing up with curiosity. I think as a leader, it's important. It's an important element of how you show up. If that's all you show up as, that would also be a problem because leaders do have to have some area of remit in which they have expertise, but certainly recognizing where you don't and where you don't have an answer. You don't need to make it up. You can just say, I don't have the answer. Let's find it together.
Awesome. I always find nice to hear from people in leadership positions to be very candid about like opportunities like those where they've had to grow. So it's very great to hear from the three of you. And Jeremy, I resonated with yours a little too hard and a little close to home on that one.
Sorry about that.
No. It's good to think about, still learning. And then in the vein of learning on these experiences and growing in leadership positions, I feel that one of the best parts of a good leader is trust, both ways, right? From the person leading, trusting the people that they are leading, and then the people that are being led, trust that they are being led in the right direction. I think the three of you have done a fantastic job at building trust, both for the org externally. I know whenever I talk to somebody and they know the org, they're like, "Oh, that's awesome! Like, great stuff." Like, "Oh, those are those Kings people, right? That's insane." Or like, "Did you guys do that thing with the ice and the tea party downtown or all that stuff?" It's. I do not think it could be understated how impressive the amount of work that the org has done in the past year and a half is. Um, so, given that, how have the three of you, as members of the board, built that trust and accountability, both inside of the org and to its collaborators, partners? We'll start with Rebecca for this one.
Yeah, it's such a
Sorry, Rebecca, you muted.
That's so funny. I had unmuted myself. I must have pressed it twice. Anyway, I was saying it's such a good question. I think it comes down to a few different things. So first off, if I'm going to commit to something, I need to follow through. I need to make sure that I really meet my deadlines. If I can't meet my deadlines, that I communicate that. If I have expectations of I'm sorry, if other people have expectations of me, that I'm able to meet those expectations. And I need to be consistent with that work and consistent with the time that I'm putting into the organization. Externally, those things are important, and it's important that I build integrity. So I do a lot of social media videos and I do a lot of press work, and I really put the onus on myself to try to speak as factually as possible. We live in this age of dis and misinformation, and I don't want to contribute to that. So I try really hard to fact check everything that I'm doing and to speak with as much honesty and integrity as I can. Excuse me. And then the other thing is building trust, which comes from community, building community. So making sure that I'm available to people, making sure that I show up, both the things in person and to meetings online, um, trying to reach out to people one on one. And I'll admit, I want to do a lot more than I'm able to do because I'm also balancing being a parent and working a full time job. If I was being paid for this work and this was my full time job, I'd be doing what I do at school, where I am in every meeting to get FaceTime, where I am having lunches with people, making sure that I show up to social events. And we do a lot of that with Mass 5051. Like the community building team is so great about having those monthly meetups. And I've been trying to like get out and go there because that's where you really build trust and relationship is like my husband calls it junk time, when you're just hanging out with somebody and you're just letting things flow. You're like not even working. So it is, it's a lot of responsibility because you need to let people meet you as a human being and create that like heart to heart experience. And then you've got to show up and do the work, which is what we're here for, is to get a job done. All right, who's next?
Okay. Couple things. I guess this is going to overlap with what Rebecca was just saying, but step one is show up and do the work. The reason I'm in this position in the org is from the second rally I think I attended in February of last year. Jim was leading the rally, and some things were going wrong. Like people were trying to start a march, and I just jumped in to help. I was just like, okay, we'll try to head them off. We'll try to change it. Didn't work, but Jim saw that I was helpful and just took action when it needed to be done. And therefore, the next time we were doing something, he called and was like, Okay, now he put me in charge. So just being there and doing the work, doing what needs to be done goes a long way in building the trust sort of internally. Externally, I think about fight back table. When Adam, you mentioned when you hear from other people outside the org and they have good opinions of us. Well, fight back table is a place where I really try to cultivate that. And one of the things that goes into that is humility. Because of first hands off and then no kings, we kind of blundered into this huge reputation to some degree. We did a ton of work. We put on a great event, but our name was attached to these massive rallies that honestly have a reach far beyond what the actual Mass 5051 group could do on its own, right? So we have this disconnect between and we're all new to this, by and large. So we have this impact and this like footprint in the activism world without the decades of credibility, without having done it for a long time. And so I try to make sure I go in there, like Aaron was saying, with an open mind, not knowing everything, listening, trying to represent us well, but trying to ask questions from the activists who have been doing this for a long time and sort of present us as a new set of helpers, not people who are trying to do it a different way. We're not trying to take over. We're not trying to change necessarily the things that they do. So that's another way to sort of build that trust with the external orgs. And I think, as I said before, too, internally, again, modeling behavior that you want to see when it comes to being accountable, when it comes to accepting feedback, when it comes to delivering, accountability, delivering on time. Like if I don't do those things, I'm not going to expect anybody else to do them. So as a leader, I want to make sure that I'm showing those behaviors to the best of my ability. And there's a long list of those things, but in general, trying to walk the walk, I guess, as a leader. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks, Chairman. One thing to note is that unlike Rebecca and Jeremy, I don't hold a leadership role in the organization in Mass 5051, aside from being on the board of directors. So I'm technically an external board of director. And so most of my lessons come from outside of Mass 5051. But I would say that both what Rebecca and Jeremy already shared, I would echo. And I would say that the showing up and being dependable is critical, but I would add a step 1A slightly before that, and it's first by trusting. So no one will trust you if they don't think that you trust them. And I have had to work through on a couple occasions, is this not with Mass 5051 necessarily, but is this somebody I can trust? Should I take this leap of faith? Is this an organization that would be good to partner with? What is my gut saying? What do other people say, etc. But when you show up with trust, it goes a long way. And I think early in my career, some projects that I worked on that were not really like projects, but sort of continuous improvement that needed to be done at the organization, just nobody had done it. And there was a lot of people who had been at that company for a long time, and they didn't want to do anything differently. And I had to show up with curiosity, with empathy, and demonstrate time and time again that I was responsible, I was dependable, I understood their point of view, their situation. And so when I went to make changes, I did it collaboratively, and was able to work through resistance because I had built those relationships and that trust. So it is definitely a work in progress. It is never a one-time thing. And it starts with trusting others.
All very, very insightful answers. I feel like it's such a hard thing to not only build trust, but then to maintain it, over a long period of time. Because it's so easy to, have someone count on something and have it not be there. So to have it done as long as you folks have, Very, very impressive. Very, very impressive. Um, Trust being such an important part of any organization or any kind of leadership structure. Um, how do you intentionally, or maybe if it's, just like breathing for you at this point, um, build healthy organizational structure and culture? Obviously, that's very important in any kind of group effort, um, but specifically for this work, it's of the utmost. It's, and so we will start with Aaron for this one.
Um, Again, I'll just note that I am not on the leadership team in 5051. So what I will share is in other circumstances. But whether you are leading a large company, large organization, or a team, or a family, or whatever it is that you are leading, I think it starts with having a set of values, and then everything is tied to those values. So if we're talking about a business or a nonprofit, operationalizing your values, attaching behaviors to them, and demonstrating how they all connect, right? So if courage is a value, for example, we demonstrate courage by sharing our viewpoint even when it differs from others, by giving honest feedback, by hearing hard feedback on something we did while staying grounded in the good person we are, right? So those behaviors are tied directly to that value, and then that just becomes part of the organization, and how people operate, because they are being held to that particular standard of living that value. And then when you're able to do that, and then you add in the diversity of identity and background, thought, beliefs, etc., and that is seen as a strength and utilized as a strength, that helps you avoid groupthink. So those two things together can set you up for a fair amount of autonomy with the teams in there, because they, again, know what's expected of them, and they're expected to. It's not necessarily the what, it's the how. Of course, there's a what involved. We all ladder up to a strategy, but there's a lot of flexibility in approach there, as long as you are doing it in a way that matches those values. So I don't take any credit for coming up with those ideas. A lot of them belong to Brene Brown and Adam Grant, and a lot of really amazing organizational psychologists and sociologists. Again, special interest. And I've done a little bit of this work, but that's to me, starting with values anywhere is really a great place to start.
I'm not going to try to improve on that. Sorry, just jump in there, Rebecca. I can add to it a little bit, but that is essential. I think the answer that we were just talking about before this, with trust in general, is also a key part of it. I think one way I would apply that to us is the idea of trusting not only that everybody is working towards the same solution, towards the same values, towards the same strategy, but as we have teams on focusing on different areas, trusting other teams to sort of own and do their work. And that works two ways. One is the team that owns a piece of work, can focus on it and they don't have people jumping in from other directions. Another is the other teams don't have to worry about it. Like letting people own their own stuff, accountability and ownership, so people can really dive in and get stuff done. I feel like sometimes we wind up looking around a little bit too much, a little bit too much of affirmation from the crowd, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting, this is not really culture. This was a culture question. But when it comes to where we are, I think that's an area where sometimes we can get a little bit cluttered. And I think trust in what other people do would go a long way there. I think the new organization structure that's been rolled out is also helping that dramatically. So I'm a big fan of that.
I'm gonna yes and everything that Aaron and Jeremy have said because that's all spot on. I also think, especially in this environment, having an open collaboration and communication is really, really important. Many of us are brand new to this work, and we all have our expertise in certain areas. So we need to have an open environment where we can all speak with each other. I am not the type of leader who likes to make a decision in a vacuum. And I also don't like top down leadership. So I view the role of a leader as someone who can help bring people together and facilitate that open, free communication. So that's, it's not my job to tell people what to do. It's my job to make sure that they have the tools that they need to do the best work that they can. And I think a lot of that comes from having that open communication and giving people that feeling of autonomy and purpose.
I have another add-on on that one though. One thing that makes organizational culture hard for us is the almost exclusively remote nature of how we communicate and the overwhelming text-based way that we communicate on Discord and Signal. That is a huge speed bump on the way to a healthy culture. It's hard. We've seen people who love and work with each other for a year now have a violent head-on collision over text because somebody just misunderstood something, and 20 minutes later it's solved, but it's ugly for those 20 minutes because people are just having problems. If we were an organization that had one day a week in person and could meet and could just hang out with each other, I think that would go a long, long way. So when we think about organizational struggles, I think we have to keep in mind that we are facing a big uphill battle just based on the way that we operate.
Yeah, I just want to me too with that one because you've seen me get into the kerfuffles as well,
It's
and
nobody's fault. It's the way text-based
no,
communication
yeah,
is like that. It just happens
text
sometimes.
space sucks. It
Yeah.
I teach this stuff to kids, and I'm always telling them like there's no tone with text. We can add emojis, and that helps a little bit, but you lose tone. So a lot of it really is committing to assuming positive intent when people are writing, and sometimes in the heat of the moment you don't have that. But yeah, there have been a couple times where I've been misunderstood to the point of people thinking that I'm like this big boss that's unapproachable. And in all of my years of being in leadership, I've never been perceived like that. So that's a really new place to be. And it's allowed me to have a lot of time of self reflection with that and figuring out how can I be more effective and open in an environment like this? And that's an ongoing process. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I think the navigating the text primary communications, I think, is an eternal struggle. It's that issue of the more tools you use to communicate, the more harder or the more difficult, pardon me, the communication is. And right, it's the platforms add to it. It's a whole thing. So despite all that, how healthy so much of the culture of the org is, I think is even that much more of a credit to you folks. The decisions, pardon me, you've made regarding it.
I think it's also a
Um,
credit to the people who are in the org. There's a lot of really, really, really good people in this organization. It's incredible to me, and I'm sorry to jump in there, but we are three people who are doing the best we can, and hopefully lands well for folks. And I wouldn't want to take anything away from every single person in this organization who shows up and does the thing all the time, because the Mass 5051 would be nothing without them.
No need to apologize for jumping in there, Aaron. This is intended to be a discussion. So anyone can jump in, non-panelists included. And I will second that in a big way. I have been so impressed by the caliber of people that have been drawn and then committed to the org. I really don't think I have a conversation with anyone and don't leave fired up and inspired or impressed or all three. It's quite amazing, the group of people that have gathered for this. Um, Army lost my place there. Um, for since joining the board, uh, what are some perspectives or insights you've gained? And you can have them be perspectives or insights uh, in any way, outward, inward, in a fun secret third direction. Have you gained since joining the board? And for this one, we will start with Jeremy.
Um, Two things that come from the big No Kings and Hands Off events that I've been part of the coalitions sort of leading those things. One is the surprising amount of things that get done by people who really don't have any idea what they're doing. There is a lot of people in that organization just winging it. We didn't know what we were doing. Most of us did not know what we were doing. And we managed to do okay. And yes, we brought in really experienced safety people and like a lot of hired experts, whatever. But that was not a thing that had been done before. There's no blueprint for how you hold that rally 3 times now. So that was interesting to learn the amount of just, oh, how do we do that? Oh, figure it out. Okay. So that was good. Related also from those coalitions. Those of us who have been even casually involved in left or liberal politics for a while have heard the circular firing squad and the left fights itself kind of cliches a lot. And I'm not blaming anyone in particular, but man, is that true. There is a lot of groups that either have a warranted grudge against another group for some slight or another, or just don't like the way they do things. And it's a source of frustration in a time when we all need to be working, pulling the same direction. The sort of pettiness and getting in each other's way that still happens among groups on the left. It's a cliche and it is damn sure rooted in truth. But that one's not so fun. And I think we're working through it. I think Mass 5051 is explicitly a big tent organization. That's one of the things that we try to do is bring in everybody. And okay, we might not agree with some of your positions on some issues, but like you're here with us on the big ones, great. Then show up on Saturday and be loud, for example. So those are a couple from me. Who's next? Aaron, you got pointed to.
Don't might move. For me, and I think similar to Jeremy, just what people are capable of, it continues to floor me. Apparently when they're not even qualified or have never done it before. And I should know that anyway, like half the stuff I do, I probably am not qualified for either, but here I am. I am constantly amazed by people's get shit done approach to things and what people are really able to accomplish when they put their mind to it. Especially given all the other things that everybody has on their plate. Like no one comes to this as this is their only thing. We all have something, at least one other thing in our lives that requires our attention. Even if it's just feeding yourself, that requires time. And as someone who hates to food shop, that's why I picked that one. But the other thing, and I wouldn't say this is new, but it's certainly affirming, is the just extraordinary care that people have for one another. Yes, there's a lot of leftist infighting. That often comes down to ideologies or, ticky-tack things on approach. But if we really concentrate on the people themselves, I find overwhelmingly care for one another. And it's often, that fighting is often from a place of care, misguided for sure, but a place of, I care about my people. I want to make sure that, we are doing this for this group that, is really important And so leveraging that, finding ways to connect that and stay connected to each other, I think is critical. But it just, I love being reminded that the people who care about others vastly, vastly outnumber those who don't.
It's so funny. I interpreted this question a little differently. So if I look at it as what or I'm looking for the actual question again. I want to be, oh yeah. So if I look at it for perspectives and insights just from joining the movement, then I completely agree. The thing that I'm floored by is people power, is seeing people just pick up things that they had no idea what to do. And now they're pros and they're teaching other people. Like I gave a class to college Democrats on how to organize a protest a few weeks ago. I had no idea how to organize a protest a year and a half ago. And I see, people in this chat like, Kat, you pick up these insane art projects and you're just like, we're just going to get them done. We're just going to do them. Jeremy's like up there with freaking Dropkick Murphys, rubbing elbows and making sure everybody's on time on the stage. It's amazing. It's like where we are is freaking amazing. And it really, really helps motivate me towards, well, if we can do this in a year and a few months, what the heck? Of course we can overthrow authoritarianism. Like, of course we can create a democracy that works for all. Yeah, we actually have the power to do this. It's a lot of work, but we can absolutely do it. When I read the question and it said, what new perspectives or insights have you gained since joining the board? The answer that I had for that one is it has changed people's perception of me in ways that I haven't been prepared for in so many different types of ways. So, as an example, I mentioned before that some people got this like, oh, well, Rebecca's on the board. She's this big boss. That was weird for me. I don't feel like I have big boss energy. I can be a boss, but I think I'm an approachable one. So that's been an interesting one to sit with. And then external perception. Oh my God, I saw you on the news, and oh, you're in my Instagram. You're famous. I'm like, no, I'm just like a mom who works at a small school. Like what? No. So it is interesting. I just had lunch with a candidate for state rep today because candidates for state rep now reach out and ask me to go have lunch with them. It's weird. I don't get it. I'm okay with it. But yeah, I'm just here for the ride.
I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if I
mean
can
it's
separate. I don't know if I can separate it that way, like board from other movement stuff. I see what you're doing there, but I feel like to our answer before about most of my work is not board stuff. It's the other stuff. That's where I feel like I have the most to learn and that I have learned. So yeah, you're in a different position because of your public facing nature.
Yeah, I definitely answered that more from like the executive
Yeah,
director role,
no, it's
which
interesting
I
though.
also feel like I'm a placeholder for. I say all the time that as soon as someone more qualified comes along, I will happily step aside. Like I just want us to be effective. I don't need to be the person helping drive that. And
Like
I'm
that's
proud
the
to
kind of
do it.
modeling that I'm talking about too. Like that's great. Like you're doing what needs to be done, and you're also willing to acknowledge that somebody else might be better, and that would be better for the organization. Then you do that. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever gets this regime out of office and gets us a better government.
preach. Thank you for sharing those insights. I feel like from the board perspective and from each of your involvement with leadership and the other aspects of the org, I feel like there's so much that can be gleaned from that. So thank you for sharing. Being conscious of time here, I wanted to hop to one final question, and then I figure we can open it up to our guests in the call, see if they have anything that they want to throw at you. So, given the new organizational plan that was recently distributed, very exciting stuff, by the way, what do you feel was the problem that the organization was created to address And then either over the course of the year and a half, or especially with the latest reorg effort, how has that plan evolved? For this one, we will go to Rebecca.
We were created in a reactive sense. We were created because because Trump got elected a second time. And so that was very clearly what 5051 was born out of is holy fuck, how are we here? We've all read Project 2025. We need to stop this now. But what it has evolved into is something really, really beautiful. We talk a lot about how we can't just be fighting against things. We need to be fighting for something. And as we've gotten together in community and learned more from each other, it's unavoidable seeing the amount of harm that this government has done to people across America since we were founded. I mean, our the red in our red, white, and blue has a lot of blood. And I am still proud to be American despite that, but I want to fight for an America that's so much better than what we've had so far. So the vision has turned more from this isn't just about getting one man out of office. This one man is a symptom of a broken system that we've had for a long time. The real thing that we're fighting for is a democracy that actually is of, for, and by the people, and that honors all people from all walks of life. Because I grew up in New York State near the Statue of Liberty, and I know what it says on that plaque. And when it says, bring me you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry, they come in from every country and every color and every race and every gender and sexuality, and you should be fucking welcome here. So that's the country that I'm going to continue to fight for, and that I think our org is trying to fight for.
Play the anthem and cut the webinar. That was enough. No, seriously, like that. I don't know if we all need to answer because I think Rebecca just summed it up really well.
Thanks. But it came from conversation with everybody. That's not just from my brain.
Aaron, do you want to hop in, or do you also?
No, I came into the organization a little bit later anyway. So, I have been much closer to this evolution than to the start. And, hearing what Rebecca said is why I wanted to join in the first place. It's because I saw that vision. I got to talk with Jeremy and Rebecca, when joining the board and hear, where they wanted to go, and where they thought it could go. And so that's why I wanted to be a part of it.
I guess I could talk a little more about the building for something, not just being against, because it's hard to do. It's a lot easier to get right now in this current situation. It's pretty easy to get a lot of people to show up and yell about fucking Donald Trump, and the shit that's going down in Doge and the immigrants and ICE and trans and all the issues, everything's wrong. That's easy energy. It's easy energy to capture, and it's one of the reasons that I think we got a lot of people to show up at some of those big rallies. But it doesn't sustain. It doesn't help you get to a new positive landing point. A lot of those issues weren't great before Trump. Many of them were not great. They're worse now, but they weren't necessarily in great shape beforehand. So how do we decide on where we're going? How do we build towards that? That's something that everybody who's in this organization can help with ideas, with work, with action to help us make sure that we're still pushing towards that positive end goal, not just the reactive piece.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the inception, especially for everybody here on the call now, of the org and the reasons why is, yeah, very palpable every moment of our lives. But I think the transformation and looking towards sustainable, like you folks said, not just this is bad, we need to do something about it, but here's the good, and here's how we're going to make it. I think is really, really, really strong. So this will bring us to our open discussion portion of the panel discussion. So we'll throw it up to the floor. If you'd like to raise a hand, you're welcome to. If you would just like to unmute and throw a question to our panelists, you are more than welcome.
Throw tomatoes, throw questions, whatever you got.
And if it makes folks
Uh,
feel more comfortable, we can also stop the recording for questions.
I'll ask one. Does anybody have a positive action that they'd like to see happen next? We just talked about how easy it is to be enraged, and we're good at providing spaces for people to be enraged on the Boston Common or wherever. There's a lot of that, but I think one of the hallmarks of the organization, what's been very helpful and hopeful for me, is there is a lot of positivity around what we're trying to do. We believe there's an end game here. There's a point to it beyond, yelling at the sky, which is something, the first time I ever heard it was when I first was around you folks 16 months ago. Never really thought about it that way, but I've been yelling at the sky for 60 years. Okay, good. That's helpful to know. But I was just wondering, given that our opposition is where they are today and has gotten there so rapidly, through positive action, they decided what they wanted to do and they've done it with complete disregard for norms, written law, custom, congeniality. What would you like to see us do as a group, as a community that's positive, that is a positive action, to counteract all of this positive action on their part, because they seem to be running unchecked and having a really good time.
So first up, I feel like you're setting me up for this because pride, fucking pride. Yeah, events that bring joy. Finding joy is resistance under authoritarianism, and I find that every year that I march in Pride, and I'm so proud that I have so many other friends in this organization that show up for Pride as well. But also like the creative stuff that we've done, like throwing ice in the harbor, super, super fun. And then as something less performative, creating care networks in our communities. I'd love to see more of that happen so we can have joy together.
Yeah, I'll tag on to that. There's a lot of people already doing a lot of good work, and Mass 5051 is good at finding some of those people, at connecting them, at, sharing resources. I see a lot of it with the work I do in Burlington. People connected with each other, but then also connected through 5051, which has been really helpful. And in my town, there is a group that started back in 2016 when Trump was first elected, and it was again to stand up for our immigrant neighbors. And they've been going ever since, and obviously in the last year plus have received renewed interest from the community. But I imagine that even if it's not a Woo Warm Welcomes exactly, and even if it's not for our immigrant neighbors specifically, that lots of towns, lots of cities in Mass have these community groups, people who care about what happens in their community and about their community members. And so one way I would love to leverage what Mass 5051 has been building is to continue to make those connections and drive community engagement, because there is the state level aspect where Mass 5051 can work towards specific aims, and those are important, and individual communities know what they need. And so how can we empower the people already doing the work? Again, a lot of us haven't been doing that work for a super long time. So let's tap in to the people who have. Let's take what we bring to the table, which is hopefully energy and people, and time and connection, and use that to lift as many different organizations as we can.
Thank you.
All right, Raven.
Hi. So I think that you all know me well enough to know. Whoops, where did I go? Whoops. You suddenly disappeared on me for a second. Sorry. So I think you all know me well enough to know that I've been an activist for most of my life. And I've watched groups like Move On and Indivisible. I've watched them blossom and then just kind of become these online email spam dumps that are constantly either asking me for money or asking my opinions, but I've never met any of these people. My intuition when I found Mass 5051 was that this is the future. That was just strictly my gut. And so, what I want to ask you guys is, given what I just said about other organizations, where do you see this going in, say, 2 years, 5 years, like that? Where I'm guessing there are some plans already, but what can you tell us publicly?
So, first off, one of the things that I think sets us apart from a lot of other activist organizations is that we act like a business and that we take this all very seriously, but we also have a lot of heart. So we also care deeply about our people and walking the walk and caring for our community. And I think that we need to keep those values in mind as we move forward. One of the things that we talk about, we'll see if this pans out, is that we kind of want to be the Heritage Foundation for Good. Like we want to write our own Project 2028 or Project 2034. Is that math, or 32? Yeah. So yeah, how can we be simultaneously putting out this fire that we're fighting while also building that future that we want? I will be honest, we live under capitalism, so we do ask for money sometimes, but I hope we don't turn into grifters in the sense of, constantly spamming people for money. I hope we can always walk that balance because the fundraising is a tricky one for sure. But yeah, I think that if we can keep people and our mission focused as most front and center, and we use those things as our North Star, that we will be able to retain our humanity and not just be another name in a coalition that puts on an event a few times a year.
To add on to that a little bit, you talk about 2 years and 5 years. I hope this doesn't make us look like we're derelict in our duties. We do not have a 5-year plan. That is beyond the time horizon that we're dealing with. I would say that even a 2-year plan right now, depending on what happens in the midterms, would look drastically different. In one direction, based on that, how that goes, we are actively fighting things getting much worse. We're helping immigrants more. We're helping women in states where abortions are illegal travel or get mail drugs by mail. We're helping, I don't know, more direct help is going to be needed. In the other direction, where Republicans suffer some kind of losses, then we're trying to pressure Democrats to go further. We're trying to do more active building. I think there's to the discussion earlier about opposition versus building. In my opinion, and I'm just thinking of this right now, so Aaron and Rebecca might not agree with me, but my opinion is that depending on how those midterms go, we might be forced into a more oppositional or more building mode, depending.
Yes, I see where you're going with that, Jeremy. And I don't think it has to be either or. But
Okay.
we have to pick our battles. We have to choose where our energies lie. I do think if we are only oppositional, we'll flame out. But we also can't ignore the realities on the ground. So the challenge will be continuing to find that balance. How do we inspire hope and make progress while also, one of our missions is to protect the marginalized. So, and to Rebecca's point, we take that seriously. So, how do we continue to show up for the most marginalized in these moments? And often those things are related. So, maybe it isn't as tough of a choice as it might seem, but I do think finding that balance is going to be critical.
Yeah, I guess I should say that in the event where we're on the opposition side, it's not just the performative yelling, it would be more active help for those community,
Yes,
active
sure.
harm mitigation, say. Like, that's where I was going with that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we might need to escalate our tactics too.
Yeah.
There's a wide range of nonviolent tactics that we can take. And the ones that we've used so far have been fairly conservative and geared towards getting our message out there and getting people activated. Authoritarianism will likely get worse before it gets better. That's just the reality of the situation. So, yeah, we're going to probably have to diversify our tactics. I think I agree with you, Erin. I think that it can still be a both. We can fight and build at the same time.
Thank you for those answers. I know that's one of the most pressing questions on everybody's mind inside the org and out right now is not just what are we going to do now, right? But what are we, the collective we, going to do about all of this, right? And these kind of endemic problems in our country for the future. Well, I know we are close to the end of our time here. So I wanted to give a moment for anyone else to ask a question, and then I have one final one to end us off. All right. My final question to you three is the very stressful and hectic time to be a human being on planet Earth, and especially if you are very keyed into everything that is going on in our country. How do each of you, the three of you, with your board responsibilities, your org responsibilities, all your other life responsibilities, and just the responsibility of being a human being, what is like one little or big thing you do for yourself to help build resilience in these incredibly trying times?
All right, I'm jumping in here because I'm also a yoga and meditation teacher, and I've done like a self-care for activists thing. So I'm not going to go into a whole diatribe, but self-care is so important. You cannot take care of your community or other people unless you take care of yourself. I have lupus. If I don't take care of myself, I am fucked. I will not be here doing this work. So I prioritize eating a diet that's good for my body, getting enough sleep at night. One of the only boundaries that I've held since joining is stopping at 8 p.m. at night because I go to sleep really early. I get up really early and I need that to stay healthy. And then exercise. So those are my three biggies that I make time for no matter what, even if it's literally doing MAFO work in between my reps in the gym. I'll get it done.
Dedication. For me, and I do think this is unique to me, so if you're not this type of person, please leave this advice behind. But doing the work is actually self-sustaining for me in a lot of ways. It gives me a sense of purpose. And that's really important to just kind of how I'm wired. So making sure that I stay connected and stay, in the know and involved, feeling like I am making an impact. I have felt frustrated sometimes that I wish that I know I could have a bigger impact if I didn't have a full-time job and a family. and I actually, my job's not so bad. I would leave it if I could do this full time, but my family, of course, I love. I have 2 small children, and I love spending time with them. And yet, so the other thing I do is I give myself grace. If I need a break, I take it. I try to listen to my body, similar to Rebecca. And I bring earplugs to all of our events, and it makes a huge difference.
I prioritize family and music, I think would be the 2 things that I would say that help me stay grounded. I go to my twin boys are in high school, so I go to their concerts and, try to be a part of what they're doing. They're also teenagers, so they don't necessarily want me to be as much a part of what they're doing anymore, which is, an adjustment, but that's okay. And music, I mentioned, I'm still singing a cappella. Everybody else does it in college and then quits, but it's been 25 years in this group for me and a couple of the guys, and pretty much every Thursday night I have rehearsal, and I'm not going to Pride this year, Rebecca, because we have Dorchfest same day. Sorry, but the masses called and they said Similar Jones needs to sing at Dorchfest, so I'm doing that. Yeah, and less formal music stuff too with friends. Just plugging in the electric guitar and playing in my buddy's attic or garage room where it's cold in the winter and hot in the summer and loud as hell. Aaron, you would hate it because it's really, really loud. But it's awesome, and that's a good way to both sort of reset and to get some energy out.
Thank you all for your tips on resilience. I think we could all do with a little more taking our care of ourselves than we all have time to do. And with that, I think we will wrap on the panel discussion. Thank you to Jeremy, Aaron, and Rebecca for taking the time to be here, taking the time to answer these questions, and for taking the time to do everything you do for the org. Thank you for everybody who attended and gained
Thank
from
you,
their
Adam.
insight. My
Adam, great
pleasure.
job.
My
Really
pleasure.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you
That
very
was great.
much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thanks,
Yeah,
Kat,
thank
for all
you.
that behind the scenes work too.
Yeah, and Raven
Raven for
too.
organizing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, Raven for spearheading.
Thanks, everybody.